Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall. This is my co host, Bill McIntyre. We're just two guys discussing the issues of the day, laying out the facts of those issues, then giving you, of course, our viewpoint and our opinions on those facts. We'd love it if you would go look at all of our podcast episodes and like and share them. You can see them on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Storyful, and you can go to our channel on Rumble, which is a application similar to YouTube if you're not familiar with it. And all of our episodes are there from season 1 and now starting season 2. You can like, share, and subscribe there, and that will give you notification of any of our new content that's coming out or any new endeavors that Bill and myself are working on. We'd love it also if you would go and help our sponsor, MateConnector.com, a large dating website out there in the market that has all the features of the big players out there, but they're much, much more inexpensive than those other players. So your dating experience isn't so expensive. So go check them out at www.mateconnector.com. Now, we've got a lot to cover. We took a week off on the podcast for this year, a few things going on in our lives. But we're back now, and we're shooting to do 2 to 3 podcasts a week at this time and get our webpage up and Bill's blog and the writing stuff that he and I are embarking.
It's been one thing after another, hasn't it, Willie?
It is. But here we go. We're going to jump right into these issues. And my theme today is World War III for you folks out there. We are on the cusp of World War III. So Kim Jong-un is North Korea's leader. Is he actually considering war? Well, North Korea experts, by nature a cautious group who seek to avoid sowing panic, have been left reeling by two of their own. Last week, the two eminent analysts dropped a bomb, so to speak, in stating their belief that the pariah state's leader is preparing for war. Kim Jong-un has scrapped the bedrock goal of reconciling and reuniting with South Korea. They said instead he's presenting the North and South as two independent states at war with each other. Quote, we believe, like his grandfather in 1950, Kim Jong-un has made a strategic decision to go to war, wrote Robert L. Carlin, a former CIA analyst with Siegfried S. Hecker, a nuclear scientist who's visited the North several times, in an article on specialist site 38 North. Such a pronouncement set off alarm bells in Washington and Seoul, and a massive debate in North Korea watching circles. Most analysts, however, disagree with the war theory. The BBC spoke to 7 experts across Asia, Europe, and North America. None of them supported the idea. Risking his entire regime in a potentially cataclysmic conflict is not on brand for the North Koreans. They have proven to be ruthlessly Machiavellian, says Christopher Green, a Korea watcher from Crisis Group based in the Netherlands. He and others note the North often acts out to bring Western powers to the table for dialogue, and there are political pressures at home, too. But they do agree that Mr. Kim's increased bluster can't be ignored, and his regime has grown more dangerous. While most argue war may still be unlikely, some fear a more limited attack could yet be on the cards. So what led to this situation, Bill, that I'm looking at? Close watchers of North Korea's Kim Jong-un are used to his nuclear threats, but some say the latest messages from Pyongyang are of a different nature. 6 days on from his New Year's Eve declaration, it is fait accompli that a war can break out any time on the Korean peninsula. His military blasted artillery across the border. North Korea has also claimed a test of new solid-fueled missile and its underwater attack drones, which can supposedly carry a nuclear weapon since the start of January. They follow on from 2 years of nearly monthly missile launches and weapons development and blatant contravention of UN sanctions. However, it was his announcement of formally abandoning the goal of unification that last week furrowed brows. Reuniting with the South had always been a key, if increasingly unrealistic, part of the North's ideology since inception of the state. This is a big deal. It fundamentally alters one of the regime's core ideological precepts, says Peter Ward, a senior researcher at Kookman University in Seoul. Kim Jong-un would now be tearing down that legacy, literally. Along with shutting diplomacy channels and cross-border radio broadcasts, he has announced he will demolish the Reunification Arch, a 9-story monument on the outskirts of Pyongyang. The arch, showing two women in traditional Korean dress reaching towards each other, had been built in 2001 to mark his father's and grandfather's efforts towards the goal of reunification. Satellite pictures released by Planet Labs on Tuesday appear to show the arch may already have been destroyed, although there's no official confirmation of this. Kim II's son had been one who went to war in 1950, but he was also the one who set the idea that at some point North Koreans would be united with their southern kin again. But his grandson has now chosen to define South Koreans as different people altogether, perhaps to justify them as a military target. So, what would a limited strike be like? Mr. Carlin and Dr. Hecker, the analysts who predicted war, have interpreted all of this as a signs that Kim Jong un has settled on actually pursuing a fight. But most analysts disagree. Seon Hyun Lee from the George H.W. Bush Foundation for U.S. China Relations points out the country is due to reopen to foreign tourists next month, and it has also sold its own shells to Russia for war, something it could ill afford if it were preparing for the battlefields. The ultimate deterrent, however, is that were the North to launch an attack, the U.S. and South Korean armies are just so much more advanced. A general war could kill a lot of people in the South, but it would be the end of Kim Jong-un and his regime, says Kookman University's Mr. Ward. Instead, he and others warn the conditions are building for a smaller action. I'm much more concerned in general about a limited attack on South Korea. An attack of that sort would take aim at South Korean territory or military forces, but would be limited in scope, says analyst Ankit Panda from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. This could even be in the form of shelling or attempted occupation of contested islands west of the Korean Peninsula. In 2010, the North struck the island of Yeonpyeong, killing 4 South Korean soldiers, infuriating the South. A similar provocation, again, could be done to test the South Korean limits. Analysts suggesting to push buttons of President Yoon Suk-yeol, a defiantly hawkish leader who has vowed to respond to North Korean attack with punishment multiple times more severe. North Korea may expect to draw out a disproportionate retaliatory attack from Seoul, says Mr. Panda, something that might spark a broader escalation in fighting. Now, their playbook move is for leverage. Others say war fears should also be put in the context of Kim's operating patterns. Looking at the history of North Korea, it has often used provocation to attract the attention of other countries when it wants to negotiate, says Seong Hyun Lee. The regime continues to suffer from economic sanctions, and 2024 is an election year for its enemies, with the U.S. presidential vote and South Korean legislature poll. This presents a good opportunity for Kim Jong-un to provoke, explains Dr. Lee. The current U.S. administration under President Joe Biden, tied up with Ukraine and Gaza, hasn't paid North Korea much heed, and Pyongyang has also typically had most engagement with Republican administrations. Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump famously had a bromance in 2019 before the denuclearization talks soured, and the North Korean leader may be waiting for former U.S. president to return to the White House, where he might weaken the alliance with South Korea and be open to dialogue again. And continued economic support from China in the past year may have also boosted its audacity. Analysts suggest it received technical help from Russia to achieve a long-term goal of launching its spy satellites, and the two states had several high-profile meetings, including a leaders' summit last year. Much of what we're seeing is a result of broader North Korean confidence in its own capabilities and its geopolitical position, given Russian and, to a lesser degree, Chinese support, said Mr. Panda. And others say Kim Jong-un's behavior is all aimed at stabilizing his own regime. This appears to be an ideological adjustment for regime survival, argues Professor Leif Eric Easley from Ewha University in Seoul. North Koreans are increasingly aware of their communist country's failings compared to the South. He is intended to justify Mr. Kim's missile spending during a difficult time. There are reports of starvation across the country. Presenting the South as the enemy also makes it easier to resolve cognitive dissonance at the heart of the North's view on South Korea, points out Mr. Ward. Previously, it was an indelibly evil state that was supposed to be the object of unification with a hopelessly corrupting culture that should not be consumed under any circumstances, but with people who need to be liberated from their evil government, said Mr. Ward. Now, the country and its culture can just be branded evil, and that justifies the continued crackdown on South Korean culture. He doesn't actually want a war, a huge gamble where he would have nothing to gain and everything to lose, says Sakhil Park from Liberty in North Korea, an NGO helping North Korean refugees. His threats are instead aimed at cementing his new North and South policy, designed ultimately to shore up his power at home, he says. While it's important for South Korea, the U.S., and allies to prepare for the worst case scenario, it is also worth a thorough examination of the internal situation in North Korea and the wider geopolitics, analysts say. At the end of the day, the best to find out what the North's leader is thinking is to engage with him, argues Gardner. The international community does not see the U.S. talking to Kim Jong Un as surrendering to Kim Jong Un's threats. It is seen as a necessary means to achieve a goal, he says. If necessary, one should consider meeting with the leader of an enemy nation to reduce misjudgments and prevent war. Now, I did a whole thing on this before, and what we got to see what's going on here is they're speculating whether it be he's going to attack or he's just doing a little hissy fit. But the bottom line is what I've been harping on that I've talked to Bill about so many times is here we have a fight in Ukraine, depleting the U.S. Then we have a fight in Israel and the Gaza Strip, depleting the U.S. Now we have Iran, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas depleting the U.S. Now we're going to have North Korea added to that, which is then, once again, going to deplete the U.S. and make it easy for China to walk right into Taiwan and take Taiwan. I hope that this plant that we've discussed, that we do praise Joe Biden on, the chips plant, is in operation, working fine, and we no longer have to worry about the Taiwanese because big problems are coming down the road, in my opinion. What do you think, Bill?
Well, you just unloaded a lot of information, and I have thoughts, of course, but I want to avoid being redundant. So I want to try to just take some big picture stuff out of this, okay?
Go for it.
First of all, I want to say that while I never will openly disagree with you about your theory about shiny objects in Taiwan and spreading the U.S. really thin, you are increasingly looking correct on that situation because the whole world sees an opportunity to take a very thinly spread United States and take advantage of it. That and the fact that we have, and I'm trying to be nice lately and not, be too partisan, but we have clearly weak leadership, which can be exploited as well. As a matter of fact, I think the world actually might even have the sense that we don't even know what's going on anymore, which is kind of amazing given this country's history. If nothing else, we usually have the information, So here we have Kim Jong-un is in the news again. You have a couple of very smart and, as you said, cautious, because North Korean policy is always cautious because of the veil of silence and secrecy behind that border. People are not allowed in for any reason, never mind to report on the state of the government or even the food shortages for that matter. But I think the approach that they're taking is right. Have a wary but cautious eye. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Okay. So the analysts who are saying that it doesn't seem like North Korea, despite the bluster and some pretty significant moves. I mean, let's face it. When you come out and say that reunification, which was your grandfather's, ultimate goal at one point, to the point where you built the massive bridge in honor of that man, you would think that reconciliation was a carrot that would always be dangling over the Korean Peninsula, okay, over the 38th parallel. You think it would always be there.
And that's why this is very concerning. Yeah,
this is very concerning because when he says that there's no hope of reconciliation, It means he's prepared to go it alone. He's not worried about any repercussions, and he doesn't care what the world thinks about it at all.
Exactly.
So, could he be blustering to get something out of the United States? Yes, he wants a release of the sanctions. Okay, one of the reasons he listed as well, he hasn't come out and made a speech, but one of the things that he has said in several appearances recently about the reason for the uptick in the military building and the, I guess, unspoken declaration that he intends to go to war, which is what we're looking at, was that he, I'm trying to word this right. Well, he's not concerned about the international image, first of all. He's all prepared to go it alone. He's all prepared to just go move forward. Now, he can do this because if this was a school fight, you'd have Joe Biden standing in front of him in a schoolyard with rolled up sleeves, and then you have Kim Jong-un standing there. But then he has Putin and Chairman Wei right behind him, like something you see in an 80s movie about bodyguards and bullies, okay? I think the problem we have here is that I think that Un knows that we are not going to be drawn into a larger conflict, okay? So we're going to support South Korea. We're going to continue to protest the barrage of monthly missiles being shot into the Sea of Japan, one of which, by the way, is now believed that could reach the continent of the United States, the most recent launch, which is probably the biggest story here, okay? Because that the other stuff is shiny objects when you look at the fact that, yeah, he's got underwater drones that can fire nuclear warheads and all that stuff. We don't know about that. But there has been a missile that has shown the capability to reach contact with the United States. That's scary, because if there's someone who could launch that, it's him.
Well,
and having said that,
not to cut you off, but question you, why are you afraid of that?
I didn't say I'm afraid of it. I'm saying that that's his ace in the hole, and that's what his ultimate goal has always been. He has stated they want to be a formidable nuclear power.
Well, he does, but I don't think he would have the balls, pardon my language, to attack the U.S.
No, I don't either, but I wouldn't rule it out, okay? Because the one thing that he has, and we know this, the reason we haven't sent in some strategic strikes on North Korea already, because they have China and they have Russia, more so than ever. Those alliances they're stronger than they ever have been. So if you want to look at him selling munitions and possibly weakening their own military, maybe not. Maybe they have enough. They can sell some, take the money that they're getting from and produce more weapons. There's a lot that can be happening here. But the problem is that just like Iran and the Houthis, okay, they're not losing anything here because, in the Korean conflict, we were shooting Koreans, but who was orchestrating the whole thing? China was. In Vietnam, we had our soldiers dying, but Russia was pulling all the strings, and China. In Vietnam, our guys died. Theirs didn't. It's a proxy war, and I think that Kim Jong knows that if we ever got involved, I know the war is necessarily against us, but if we ever were to get involved militarily, I believe firmly that China and Russia will be right there saying, "Watch your step," and drawing some lines in the sand. I really do. South Korea is doing their thing. They're buying 20 stealth fighters from Lockheed Martin. That's got to be what, 15, 20 million each?
Easy, yeah.
That's big money, okay? The 20 stealth fighters can do some significant damage to a country with no technology.
Like I said to you, South Korea is so more technologically advanced.
And their economy is one of the strongest in the entire world.
Yeah, they could destroy North Korea. I mean, that's why I don't think he's going to be a big. I like the idea where they're saying a smaller attack, like something.
Right. So I think he's going to try to annex something in South Korea.
Maybe an annexation. I don't know, but I just think he's going to start a little skirmish there, kind of like what the Houthis are doing. So it
testing the waters.
Us over there a little bit again, and now with them. Yeah. Why wouldn't China at that point do something? Because, like you just said, you have Russia. China has Russia too. But the big thing here that you did say that I really like that you didn't go with further, which I wish you did state in the beginning that many other countries are now going to take advantage of the U.S. Now, all these big nefarious players we're talking about may not be one of them. I agree with you. They may be
Yeah.
looking out there saying, hey, it's time. We could actually make a new world order right now. And how many times have we heard that coming out of the World Economic Forum that they want a
Yeah.
new world order? Well, here's the opportunity. Is this the setup to begin to that? And is China going to be the new world order? We don't know yet.
Well,
But we'll
let's look at one bad player. Okay, they're now members of the UN, and we have done significant effort to maintain our relationship with them because of the strategic location of their country. Can you name a country that was a meddler in World War One, World War II, that is all of a sudden starting to act up and having all kinds of opinions on the world stage as they start another campaign against the Kurds? Turkey.
Yep.
Turkey is a huge problem for us if they stop meddling, because of the fact that, strategically speaking, we need our missiles there. We need them. Okay, and they're flexing muscle too. This wouldn't have happened under Donald Trump.
But I would disagree a little bit. We don't need our missiles there anymore. We can literally hit anybody from anywhere on the planet. So it's not like we need these strategic positions anymore.
But they serve a deterrence for that area of the world, though.
But they could probably not have to if we showed some ability to hit someone from anywhere, which they know we have anyway. But if we show the brute force, I don't think it's going to matter if we have a missile right next to Russia, right next to Middle East, whatever.
One B-2 stealth bomber in a fueling tanker, and they could probably take out most of the world with what's on that plane.
Even the nuclear subs and the battleships we have can hit things from anywhere. I mean, and then they're building an underwater aircraft carrier. Think of that. That's going to be scary. But we're going to move on. These are big, heady topics. I've got another big one after this, but we're going to let him take over his segment, and he's got some stuff that's going on. It may not correlate to World War III, but it is correlating to an invasion of the United States. Go ahead, Bill.
Thanks, Steve. I'm going to try to do the best I can to be concise here, because I've got a lot of information here, and I tried to trim it down to make it so it flows and still cover everything. But illegal immigration is very much so in the news more than ever now. And one of the reasons is that the American voter has started to actually recognize that we are actually suffering an actual invasion, okay? Think about this. New Hampshire, it's not a border state at all. New Hampshire has never, ever been a state where the immigration issue was huge. But this election cycle, Nikki Haley and Trump are up there, and they're talking about immigration. They're talking about, unfettered invasion. It's a serious issue. So one of the things I've always been concerned about is the deaths of innocent Americans at the hands of illegal aliens. Because one thing I can't stomach is the fact that people who don't belong here are taking the lives of people who are just simply living their lives and actually do belong here. So we have a couple of high-profile stories in the news today for the last week or so, but they've come to light more so as the election is coming up, all the primaries. First story is an illegal immigrant in Colorado who had been deported 4 times is now facing charges after he allegedly killed the mother and her son in a car crash, and which involving alcohol. The Jose Guadalupe Menjivar Alas had his bond set at $250,000 cash only this week, and he appeared virtually from the Broomfield County Jail on Thursday. The judge cited community safety concerns and doubts about his ability to appear for future court dates. He said even the possibility that Mr. Menjivar would be deported if he posts bond is very concerning, the judge said at one point during the hearing. So he's a flight risk, and then he clearly has an easy way to get back into the country as well. So Menjivar Alas has been convicted of DUI multiple times prior to his arrest last month. And I guess you could probably say there's an indictment on the court system there for not being in jail, because you're supposed to be in jail after a DWI. The Broomfield Police Department detained the 37-year-old December 15th in connection with a fatal crash 3 days before. He was driving a Toyota Tundra to crash into a Mazda CX-5 driven by 47-year-old Melissa Powell. And Powell's 16-year-old son, Roden, was also in the Mazda, and they were both killed immediately in the crash. An investigation determined that alcohol and speed both contributed to the crash. So Menjivar Alas was transported to a local hospital after the crash, and once released, he was booked into the Broomfield County Jail. charged with DUI, vehicular homicide from reckless driving, and vehicular homicide caused by DUI, and was designated a habitual traffic offender. So that's a real slap on the hand, let me tell you. So U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, told Fox News Digital that Menjivar Alas, a citizen of El Salvador, has been deported from the U.S. 4 times. He has no regard for immigration law, an ICE spokesman said. Menjivar Alas was first convicted of DUI in 2007 and received subsequent convictions for the same offense in December 2016 and May 2019, also convicted of driving with alcohol on September 16, 2007. So this is a multiple offender where he should, seriously be in jail already. An immigration judge issued his first order of removal in 2009. He was then removed from the U.S. in 2000. Despite being deported, he continued to make his way back into the country. So, okay, that's a pretty bad story, okay? There are a lot more of them. And, of course, it's not a new thing. We recently had a situation in which the case of Kate Steinle, San Francisco woman who was brutally murdered by an oft-deported savage criminal herself. They came to a very unfavorable ruling that gave the family no satisfaction of any kind in this, where they simply did not go the way they should have as far as the conviction of the man that killed Miss Steinle. And this is a high-profile story, and this story is about 6-7 years old. And all along it's been happening, and I'm not going to say there's been an active campaign to stifle these stories, but people don't want to talk about this because this is one of the many problems associated with unfettered, unchecked illegal immigration. So a second story is Tammy Nobles, the mother of a girl named Kayla Hamilton, an autistic girl, testified against Alejandro Mayorkas in the ongoing impeachment inquiry hearing. Tammy Nobles filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security for $100 million in response to the preventable rape and strangulation of her autistic daughter, Kayla Hamilton, by an illegal alien who was a known member of MS-13 and had an extensive criminal history prior to entering the United States and being released in 2022. So Tammy Nobles joined Josephine Dunn, whose daughter Ashley Dunn was killed on May 26, 2021, when she unknowingly ingested 5 milligrams of fentanyl and testifying against Mayorkas. The hearing examined the devastating impacts of his intentional border crisis on Americans across the country, with testimony for those who have been impacted by his refusal to follow the laws and his betrayal of the public trust. I would say he has blood on his hands. I'm sorry, but I would. The hearing featured the heartbreaking testimony of Tammy Nobles, who was clear in her belief that her daughter's death was a result of Mayorkas' betrayal of the public trust and failure to follow the law. Following the hearing, and in light of the committee's nearly year-long investigation into the causes, costs, and consequences of this crisis, 18 Republicans on the committee announced their support for the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. Okay, so this story is outrageous, okay, because like I said, people on Twitter were urging this family to sue. This when you have people urging someone to sue the government, that's clear indication that the people have had enough of the situation, okay? So a little too little too late, but people are starting to show their frustration with the border crisis, okay? So more and more Americans are expressing outrage. Republicans have been consistently all over it, but to no definable end, unfortunately. And Democrats and independents alike are increasingly concerned as well. And it'll prove to be a real hot-button issue in this election as Americans have begun to realize the extent of this invasion. So I attempted to come up with some solid stats on how many Americans have been killed by illegals. And I looked at so many sources, Steve, but the problem is that I would be guilty of pandering. I don't want to use. I'm trying to figure out words here. Misinformation, and probably be accused of having some kind of agenda because the numbers are simply not there. But there has been a consistent belief that about 2,000 innocent Americans are killed each year, and even a person who's part of a libertarian think tank who once disputed Trump's claim, other major politicians' claims about that number being accurate. Some have said as many as 10,100. Even the person with a think tank who said that 2,000 is unlikely has recently changed his statement to say that it's actually quite possible or feasible. That's the amount, 2,000 per year, 20,000 possibly since 2003. Now, we've seen a 600% uptick in murders by illegal aliens against citizens in 2017. So the numbers, I could talk all day long about what the think tanks come up with and all that, and how they designate, how they don't. But the problem is that that there is no real tracking system for immigration status in relation to crime.
Yeah,
But the numbers,
no statistics or reports, but
right.
but
There is some damning. Good.
well, like there's a thing I found, and it says here 2 days after Trump made his remarks, Sanders responded on CNN's State of the Union, saying that the crime rate for those in the country illegally is actually lower than the general population.
Yeah,
The
I've
issue
heard
is
that.
ripe for dispute because, as we said, there are not readily available statistics on this issue. The
Right.
Justice Department keeps data on federal crimes committed by immigrants in the country illegally, and an analysis from the U.S. Sentencing Commission found that undocumented immigrants made up a disproportionate share of federal inmates sentenced for
Yes.
non-immigration crimes in 2016, but the vast majority of crimes, more than 90%, are dealt with at state and local level, where those
Right.
kinds of data are harder to come by because those jurisdictions rarely record whether prisoners are immigrants or in the country illegally. But Bill,
Right.
I'll tell you, the biggest issue I see with this, honestly, is that
Sure.
they're using these people and these data, these statistics, whatever they find or use, to defend that the crime amongst them is lower than our general
Oh yeah.
population.
They desperately want people to believe that. They really do.
Exactly. And I'm going to go
Um,
this way. It very well may be. But that's not the point. We have crime in this country. When you have people come into this country, they are committing crime. So it's adding to the crime statistics, period.
it is. It is. And if you want to just get down to, thank you for that, Steve, because
Yep.
I didn't skip that segment to save time. I minimized it in the interest of being fair.
Of course.
Because a lot of the stuff that I came up with, even the authors presented it as indisputable, and then at the end they make us comment like, "Oh, well, this can't be verified." And it get very frustrating, and I realized I don't want to come on here and talk out of my rear end. I want to be concise about it. But the numbers do favor the fact that there's a significant increase in violent crime. I'm not talking about purse snatching. We're talking about violent crime, rapes and murders that have been related significantly to the illegal population. So I guess if you want to reduce it to its most base level, if the government's only responsibility, and at the end of the day, the founding fathers believed this, is to protect the citizens, when you are not paying attention to who's coming into this country, which is a federal responsibility, not monitoring and not enforcing laws, and innocent Americans die, one is too many.
No, I agree 100%.
It's a numbers game. People are like, "Oh, only 2,000." 2,000?
Yeah,
You don't think that's a good number?
That's not what. That's the problem with them. That's not what they should be focused on. What we just laid out is what they should be focused on. We have crime in this country. We're trying to curtail it and make it less. When you let these people come in, let's not go in the proportion of crime in them. Let's say they add to the crime in the U.S., period.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, look at inner city crime, okay? You look at all the liberal-run cities, and that's not a bash. You have liberal-run cities, and those cities tend to be the sanctuary cities, and consequently, those tend to be the cities that have been receiving the largest influx of illegal aliens. You've seen the stats. You've seen 400% increase in this crime, 200% increase in this and all that. It's very possible a lot of these crimes are being committed by those people who are being shipped into this area.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't they feel invincible? They violated what's supposed to be the most significant area of a country, which is a border. Where any other country in the world, you'd be thrown in jail. In this country, you're given a gift card of $5,000 and a license so you can vote. I mean, it's ridiculous. They walk across with the assurance that they can do whatever they want because the federal government is not interested in them. And then they go out and do whatever they have to do. And I'm being very careful not to be a Trump here and say that, scumbags and all that, and gangbangers. They're not all gangbangers, but a lot of people come from countries where there's not a lot of law and order, and there's a lot of poverty, and people are simply raised to do what they have to do to survive. And
Well,
that's often on the backs of people who,
it's not even defending Trump. Let's just look at the issue in reality, okay? Are doctors, lawyers, professors, really important people to society, are they the ones coming into this country illegally? Are they doctors?
No.
Then we are getting the degradation of our society by taking in these people that are unskilled, not doing much. I hope they're all safe. We both do. We want them to be safe.
Of course.
But I'm not a big believer in this asylum thing. I don't think they come here for asylum. I think they say they come here for asylum, and they don't. That's the bottom line. And yes,
you used to have to prove that also. You used to have to prove political persecution. You had to have some kind of evidence that you were unsafe to return to your country of origin. Therefore, you must reside in the United States.
They can't even prove who they are. So how could they prove that? That's the problem. So
but the thing is, our original immigration system was we chose how many people from where came here because we wanted to bring in people that would better this country. I think we've gone the opposite direction on this.
So it was kind of an affirmative action to immigration. Is that what you're saying?
I think you might want to give yourself that one. Yeah.
Okay. So what's wrong with that? It was okay in this country to do with every single vocation around the planet, but we can't do that with people coming into it's just ridiculous.
But as we're seeing now, that also turned out to be a bad idea too, Steve. So.
Well, it did. But my point being is the liberals were for that, and then this is similar, and they're not for that. The hypocrisy is just disgusting, and I'm sick of it. But
it's social engineering is what it is. There's a plan here. Mayorkas is not doing this on his own. Mayorkas he's being told not to. And the fact that Joe Biden,
he was just told to bury his head in the sand because they don't give a shit.
He's gonna fall on his sword. He'll give him a nice settlement package, severance package, and that'll be it. So
to sum this up, spinning the crime, suing our country for our taxpayers' money if something happens, so that we have to pay out again. And increase in crime based upon these people, period. We're not saying their population, their ratio is higher than our general. We're just saying they add to the crime in this country, period.
That's right.
So we'll move on.
My second story will also be on immigration, but I'd like to just jump into yours now, Steve.
So thank you, sir. And we're going to move on, and I'm going to maintain my World War III thing, and this is going to sum it up a little bit better. The U.S. and U.K. are launching airstrikes against Houthi sites who are, like Bill was talking about, a proxy war. This is a proxy war of Iran against us because they do fund the Houthis and help the Houthis. So against Houthi sites in Yemen has raised fears that the two nations and their allies might be drawn into a wider regional war. President Joe Biden has vowed to continue targeting the rebels' weapons until they stop attacking ships in the Red Sea. He has been reluctant to respond too forcefully to the Houthis lest it trigger a war in the region, in part because of the group's backing from Tehran, said the Wall Street Journal. It comes after the recent tit-for-tat missile attacks on the border regions of Iran and Pakistan. There is a swift and sharp deterioration and diplomatic relations between Islamabad and Tehran, with ambassadors withdrawn, official ties severed, and rhetoric raised in tone, said Al Jazeera. They also helped spread global alarm, with concern already high that Israel's continued bombardment of Gaza risks sparking a regional conflagration. Now, let's focus on the Middle East. For decades, Israel and Iran have been engaged in a shadow war fought on land, at sea, and in the air, said Foreign Affairs. Now the war in Gaza is disrupting their already delicate calculus, and the longer the conflict continues, the more it will reduce the incentives for moderation and raise the risk of Israeli-Iranian conflict. Since the start of the conflict in Gaza, Iran's Lebanon proxy Hezbollah and Yemeni Houthi rebels have carried out dozens of attacks, particularly on ships in the Red Sea. This is all part of the grander scheme from the axis of resistance for Iran to gain power in the region, Christopher O'Leary, director of the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell, told CNN. Earlier this month, Lebanon's prime minister accused Israel of trying to drag it into a regional war after Hamas's deputy political leader, Salah al-Arori, was killed in a drone strike in Beirut. These escalations, which have only increased since the start of the year, and the inherent dangers of the future, reflects a merger of crisis in the Middle East, said the New Yorker. 10 conflicts among diverse rivals or in different arenas over disparate flashpoints and divergent goals are now converging. For all the recent punditry warning about a widening war, the trajectory has long been obvious. So that's the Middle East. Let's move to Russia. I'm going to talk about all these players we've discussed. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which began in February 2022, has been described as more dangerous than anything Europe has seen since the end of World War II by Politico. And let's be real, Politico is a Democrat liberal publication.
Oh, it is the liberalist of liberal, no question.
Yep. Both sides have since suffered devastating losses to their military personnel. The Kremlin has battered cities all over the Ukraine with missile attacks, even as Ukraine has fought to regain lost territory on the battlefield and keep up a counteroffensive that even its leaders admit failed to make the breakthrough many in Kiev had hoped. With European leaders thought to be tiring of the conflict and resistance growing in Washington to open-ended financial support, Putin may see the war in Gaza as an opportunity to push his advantage. Last autumn, he withdrew Russia from the global treaty banning nuclear weapons tests, and with the world's largest nuclear arsenal at his disposal, some Western arms control experts are concerned that Putin may be inching towards a nuclear test to intimidate and evoke fear amid the Ukraine war, reported Reuters. Facing re-election in March, Putin has further intensified Russia's bombardment of Ukrainian cities, vowing in his New Year's Eve message that Russia would never back down. Now, let's move from Russia and Ukraine to China. The greatest threat to geopolitical stability has long been assumed to be the growing tensions between China and the U.S. over the past few years. A slight thawing led to a groundbreaking meeting between leaders Xi Jinping and Joe Biden in November, aiming to reestablish communication and reach some consensus on trade, technology, and global security. But core issues between the two countries aren't getting any easier, and the Financial Times' Swamp Notes newsletter. Much like Russia's claim over Ukraine, Beijing sees Taiwan as an integral part of a unified Chinese territory. It has, in recent years, adopted an increasingly aggressive stance towards the island. At the same time, the U.S., under President Joe Biden, has ramped up its support financially, militarily, and rhetorically for Taiwan's continued independence. Xi warned in his New Year address that China and the island would surely be reunified and ramped up military pressures on the island before its crucial 13 January elections, said the BBC. The reaction from Beijing to the victory of Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party, which China loathes as separatists, has been relatively muted so far, said The Guardian. However, a stronger response may come when President-elect Lai Ching-te is inaugurated in May. The devastating human costs aside, even if fought by conventional methods, a military conflict between the world's two biggest economies would lead to a severing of global supply chains, a blow to confidence, and crashing asset prices, said The Guardian's economics editor Larry Elliott. It would have catastrophic economic consequences up to and including a second Great Depression. Now, I started my podcast today talking about North Korea. So we're going to now, after I've summed that up, we're going to move to North Korea. In comments made at the year-end meeting of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, the country's leader Kim Jong-un warned that the actions of the U.S. and its allies have pushed the Korean Peninsula to the brink of nuclear war. Since talks with the then U.S. President Donald Trump broke down in 2019 over disagreements about international sanctions on Pyongyang, Kim has focused on modernizing his nuclear and missile arsenals, according to Sky News. Last year, North Korea test-fired more than 100 ballistic missiles, many of them nuclear-capable weapons, which could target South Korea, Japan, and even the mainland U.S. While continuing along the path of high-speed military development, Kim has been chumming up to Russia and remaining on the right side of China, said the Times' Asia editor, Richard Lloyd Parry. This has added greatly to tension on the peninsula, said Lloyd Parry, and increased the chances of so-called miscalculation, where one side assumes that the other is about to attack and goes first. However, he continued, it has no visible deterrent effect on Kim. So the bottom line is, I just laid out all those chess pieces. Ukraine, Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea, and Iran, all moving their pieces into place to make the U.S., as we've discussed, thinner in their weaponry, thinner in their disbursement of battleships, planes, all these things. The only good thing we have in our favor is we can hit any country from our mainland on the whole planet, which is very We have carriers and battleships and nuclear subs and things that can hit things. We have the most
well, one of about 5 nuclear powers that can do that.
Yes, but that's the whole thing is, I think maybe if you look at it, Bill, the reason why I say North Korea is this: if you look at Iran, they're an established country, and no one really wants to go to war with them, especially because of their religious zealotry. Then you look at Russia. Russia will pick on the little players. Russia's always been a bully. They will pick on the little countries. They will never go to war with a big country, okay?
They unified a continent out of fear.
Exactly. And then we'll go to China. No one's going to screw with China. Not even us, probably. And they're not going to screw with us, I don't think. But they will screw with Taiwan with all this stuff going on. But I'll tell you this, that Iran, Russia, and China will let North Korea be expendable. They don't care. They will let North Korea get killed. I think they will goad Kim into starting something with the U.S. to make us even spread thinner, and then we'll wipe that guy out. And China doesn't care. He's irrelevant in the scheme of things. What do you say?
Right. It's like setting up a patsy and then taking them out, and then nobody suffers anything over it.
Exactly.
Well, you went a different direction with this subject than I thought you would. I was all ready to talk about the Houthis and Iran and all that, but you painted a much bigger picture, and it's a picture that needs to be painted. I'm just not necessarily as long on responses given the direction that you went, other than to say that I think your assessment, I mean, I hate to do nothing but agree with you, but I have to. I agree with your assessment about China and Taiwan. I agree with your assessment about other things. Iran, I've consistently shown you on this podcast and in private conversations that I don't take Iran as seriously as you do. I think they're a dangerous country, but I think the fact that they have to do these little pissant, little chess moves all over the place right now that they're doing, it indicates to me they're not serious. I don't think a real player bothers with shooting spitballs at the unpopular.
What other country on the planet shoots spitballs at the U.S.?
Right now, a lot of them are.
No, name one country other than Iran. You can't.
Well, I mean, I probably would need more context from my own comment and then from yours also to really answer that question. But I guess I was prepared to talk about the fact that the Houthis, attacking the U.S. and the UK attacking the Houthis is a matter of yes, we had to do something. It's been an impotent response so far. We have 151 attacks on U.S. soldiers, and I can't believe that they only traumatic brain damage is what they're saying. When we all know veterans that have come home with that shit and they're just ruined for life and their families are destroyed and everybody around them are destroyed.
The fact that they say it's only that people at our front lines is disgusting.
Outrageous to me. One traumatic brain damage is enough to level that country with a series of mushroom clouds. But that's just me. Okay, so what they're doing is they're doing this little crap with their attacks, and we have to do something. So Biden even said the other day that we're not effective. We haven't been effective. I guess there's something to be said for the honesty of that statement, but it was a little discouraging when the mightiest, air force in the entire world was doing ineffective operations as our soldiers continued to be attacked.
Who's in charge of those operations?
A guy who's in the hospital being treated for prostate cancer, if I'm
No,
not
he's
mistaken.
not. The commander in chief is in charge. I know that you
Well,
want to
okay.
put it on Lloyd Austin, but
No, I don't
President
want to put it
Biden,
on anybody. I'm saying we do have a military, and we have its chain of command. You want to go all the way to the top? Yes, Biden's
for
ultimately
him to
responsible.
say that they haven't done enough, it's your fault then. Do something. It's
Exactly,
ridiculous. Yeah.
and for him to admit it. But the
Yeah.
thing I'm getting at here is that the attacks on Yemen are going to do nothing. Okay, they're not going to do anything because the Houthis have already stated that it's already boosted their popularity, their support, and their funding. Okay, because the United States is so hateable to the entire world, apparently, that when we attack the Houthis in Yemen, a very unstable country, it's nothing but good for them. It's good PR.
Who
And on
runs
top of that,
who runs
huh?
Turkey? Who runs Turkey, Bill?
Erdogan.
No. The Houthis run
won?
Turkey, right? The
I
Houthis
wasn't aware.
control
I know they're
80
an influence. I wouldn't say that. I didn't know they were leading it, but yeah,
I
okay.
believe they control 80% of Turkey, okay? So with that being said, that would be the Houthis control the majority of Turkey, right?
Yeah.
So then who controls Turkey?
All right, the Houthis do. All right.
Iran.
Yeah, okay. But what I'm getting at, that's good. Thank you. I did not know that. What's good though is that, I mean, not good, but I guess what I'm getting at here is that Iran is not suffering anything because their little minions are the ones who are getting killed and anything else.
Exactly.
But like I said, I don't share your. You have a lofty respect for Iran's military. I'm just not entirely sure I do.
No,
I think that they're so strategically weak that if we committed ourselves to an attack, I think we could be very effective with Iran.
Well, here's the thing. It's not that I feel Iran's military itself is effective at all. That's not my argument. My argument is what our forefathers thought. The separation of church and state is a real thing. Iran does not separate church and state. They are run by their church, their country.
Of course.
They are
most Islamic countries are.
But they're religious zealots, dude. They will kill.
Yeah.
They're the type of people that believe in suicide bombing, whereas we don't.
Yeah.
So
there are 14 Middle East countries, Steve, that will tell you that they're ruled by the laws of Islam.
But Iran's one of the ones that has nuclear capabilities. Others don't.
That's right.
So here's the problem. They now have a nuclear bomb, which could be their suicide bomb for their country. And they don't care. They're religious zealots. That's what scares me. Not their military, their religious zealotry.
They're not afraid of consequences the average person is.
Exactly. Thank you. That's a great summation right there. Yes. But that's a good subject. Now we want to continue doing our invasion from the border. So we're going to hand it because this all does correlate to my subject of a World War III. Because believe it or not, this border thing that we're talking about, and it's very important to be talked about, and you're doing it, this is depleting our resources also. We are fighting a battle at our border. But go ahead, continue with your talk.
Well, you're talking about striking on the outside, and I'm talking about being hit from the inside,
Exactly.
which is the fact that both are going on actively right now. It does suggest real problems for us in the future.
Yes.
So I'm going to get back to kind of the same story, but I try to separate it best I could about the border. And I want to open with the Homeland Security Committee planning to vote on January 31st on the impeachment resolution of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. This is an enormous story. The Democrats accuse the Republicans of playing politics. And in this case, they're actually right because the Republicans feel that taking down Mayorkas would give them the political momentum to then go after the impeachment of Joe Biden. And they feel that if they have any signs of weakness in the handling of the Mayorkas trial impeachment hearing, then they would not have the political gumption, if you will, to carry out larger impeachment inquiries and things they're trying to work on. But at the end of the day, Mayorkas's impeachment trial has not been going well. He has had the two aforementioned people I discussed last segment who testified that he's not doing his job in the form of protecting citizens from fentanyl and from just plain cold-blooded killers. Okay, he's on the spot. He's really trying to keep a low profile, but a New York Democrat the other day actually shot down a woman who was in tears over losing her son to fentanyl and basically suggested that the woman had no no knowledge of the subject to speak after she lost her son. It was an embarrassing moment. It really was. This is what the hearings have been like. People lining up to tell him what his policies and consequently the Biden policies and the administration policies are doing to this country. But, what do they care? It's only 1 or 2 kids, It doesn't matter if MS-13 rapes and kills your daughter. Well, we have a bigger agenda here, So what's happening now is that while discussing the inquiry into Mayorkas, Fox News reporter Jackie Henrich asked Biden if he thought the unconstitutional House Republicans are trying to impeach Mayorkas, to which the president responded with a confused look. That's a shocker. But Heinrich actually went so far as to ask Joe Biden if he believed the border was secure. Shockingly, for the first time, he said, "No, it's not." Biden said, "I haven't believed it for the last 10 years. And I've said it for the last 10 years. Give me the money." And then he said, "No, I've," pause, stumble, bumble, "I've asked for thousands more of everything from judges to," anyway. What a beautiful quote that is. Okay, so Biden says that he's trying to shore up judges because the immigration system is currently like 5 years backed up to make appearances. It's completely overwhelmed. And this is simply not true. He has not made one statement to this point that the border was unsecure. He's consistently deferred to Mayorkas about it, and on top of that, he's never been denied funding for one thing he's asked for until the House took control, until the Republicans took control of the House. I won't use the word lying, but he's incredibly disingenuous when he says this, because he never believed that the border was a problem. He likes the way it is. For whatever reason, we know that he likes the open border policy. He's the one who opened it after we reduced crossings by 95% under Donald Trump. I mean, that's a real number, 95%. And he just opened the gates when Trump left office, and it's really sad.
Like we know, this is what the Democrats want. It's demographic destiny, as they say.
Yeah, I'll get to that too.
Yep.
So I injected that little segment about how untruthful that is because it needed to be said. It needed to be said there because otherwise it wouldn't be effective. I don't continue the story without telling that part. But here's the thing. If he had a problem with the border, he has the ability to end it all because he can shut it down. Here it is, okay? Quote, "The President of the United States has the authority to suspend the entry of all aliens if she finds the entry of aliens detrimental to the interests of the United States. Federal statutes grant the Department of Homeland Security general authority over operations to secure the border and specific authority to close temporarily any port of entry. Emphasis, when necessary to protect national interests. However, when the statutes authorize more sweeping executive action to close many or all the ports of entry on the southern border to most or all people and goods is a question which the federal courts have not grappled. So it hasn't happened yet. But he clearly has the authority to do so. And if he was so concerned about the border, he would have done that. So you only have to assume that he likes the chaos that's going on, okay? So this is the first time that Joe's given a stance, any stance, is he repeatedly dodged questions about the security of the border with his usual, "Come on, man," when asked about it, and has instead deflected to Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. He's also refused to chastise Mayorkas when the opportunity was there to distance himself and say, "It's not my fault, it's Mayorkas' fault." He didn't even do that. He just simply gave no comments, okay? So the recent admittance by the president that the border is not secure is in direct contrast to the embattled Mayorkas, who actually has the audacity to insist that the southern border is indeed secure. Now, I guess a question needs to be asked, what's going to happen to that now when the president himself was quoted as saying it's not? So that's going to be interesting.
They'll double down on it like they do everything.
Yeah. Well, let's see where it goes, though.
He misspoke. He didn't mean to say that.
Well, this should be a rousing chorus of bullshit in the chamber when that comes out.
Yeah.
So a source familiar with the matter told CNN the plan is to have the committee vote on January 1st. On Mayorkas' fate. And they're having the second and final impeachment tomorrow. So House GOP leaders have been growing confident they'll have the votes to impeach Mayorkas over the migration problem at the border, now that a number of swing district Republicans signaled their support and the immigration issue remains front and center in the 2024 campaign. Well, the raise the thin majority is still uncertain how a floor vote will pan out, as Democrats call the unprecedented move reckless and blame Congress for the failure to fix immigration laws. Mia Ehrenberg, a DHA spokesperson, on Thursday accused House Republicans of wasting time by pursuing impeachment and called the effort a harmful distraction from our critical national security priorities. If that isn't a national security priority, I don't know what is.
Well, the hypocrisy of that statement is ridiculous. Would you say, Bill, let's go out on a limb here, okay? It's pretty thin limb, so be careful. You do weigh over 200 pounds, okay? We're gonna go out on this limb, okay? Would you say a pandemic is a national security risk?
Absolutely.
Oh, but they impeached Trump twice. So what is this guy talking about? Am I wrong?
No.
Okay.
Great example, Steve.
Yeah, it's just
take it to the house. Good for you. I like that.
The way these Democrats think, I just don't get it. And you know very well they're going to double down on what Joe said. They'll say the border security misspoke. He was speaking about something else, and they'll make something else and make it up and say it. And let's be real. I wanted to ask you this while we're doing this. As far as the basis for Mayorkas to get impeached, is it there? Because I know there was a bunch of Republicans that were going to go side with the Democrats and not let it happen. So is that happening again?
It's unknown. It's going to be a real close vote. It really is.
You got to say that the Republicans are not a party. Okay? They're a segmented division. And the Democrats, they got segments, but they're a party. Even though they have their segments, they take, like you just said, for me to take the ball to the House, the Democrats will take the ball to the House. The Republicans will fumble it on the way.
And they won't care how wrong they are while they carry that ball. They can carry it over the wrong end zone and not care.
They don't care. Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, I mean, I could go over all the politics involved in the hearing, but I want to actually just have a second to talk about some border stuff here, Steve, okay? I want to just talk about some stats that are just alarming. And this is from the Department of Homeland Security. So, by the way, just as an aside, if Mayorkas is impeached, it will be only the second cabinet official impeached in American history. First one was Secretary of War William Belknap in 1876. So,
but let's go this way. I want you to proceed with what you got. But if let's say Mayorkas gets impeached, isn't Joe Biden just going to put someone else in there?
He'll probably make his assistant in charge.
And it won't make any difference. But go ahead.
It won't. No, it's a Pyrrhic victory at best. It really is.
It's a de facto victory, yes.
So let's talk about some stats, okay? CBS News, I know how much you love polls, Steve. POLLS. A CBS YouGov poll released Sunday found that 45% of Americans call the situation a crisis, up from 38% in May. 30% said it's very serious, 18% somewhat serious, and 7% of dopes apparently say it's not much of a problem. Majority, 63%, said the Biden administration should be tougher on immigrants crossing the southern border, which is up 10% since September. Sources with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection told Fox News Digital that migrant encounters hit a staggering 300,000 in December 23, reaching a level, though unimaginable just years ago. Those thought unimaginable. It is the highest total for a single month ever recorded, and also the first time migrant encounters have exceeded 300,000. So according to internal Border Patrol data obtained by CBS News, at least 853 migrants have died trying to cross the U.S.-Mexico border unlawfully in the past 1 year, making fiscal year 2022 the deadliest year for migrants recorded by the U.S. government. 2023, recorded by the U.S. government. The figure, which far exceeded the previous record of 546 deaths recorded by the Border Patrol in fiscal year 21, is likely an undercount due to data collection limits, again, which is what my migration policy analysts said. But some key facts are, encounters at the southwestern border in FY 2023 increased over 40% since the year before. All right. Last month, U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported a 40% increase compared to September 22 and 18% compared to 21. Since Biden took office, there have been 7.5 million encounters nationwide and 6.2 million encounters at the southwest border, in addition to 1.7 million known gotaways, which that almost 2 million, that's twice the size of Rhode Island in people who got away from the border. Wow. And in fiscal year 2023, 169 individuals whose names appear on the terrorist watch list were stopped trying to cross the U.S.-Mexico border between ports of entry. Only 18 were apprehended, but that was in September. And so far,
wait a minute. You're telling me 170 people that were on the terrorist watch list came over, and they only apprehended 18 of that 169.
No, in September they apprehended 18 alone.
So overall they've apprehended.
They're saying that September was a banner month with 18 overall, considering they had 169 total.
How many? I wonder what the statistic is of who they did not get. That's the scary
one. Oh, I know that's the big unknown, isn't it? At the end of the day,
we got to understand these numbers are so high. Just even a 1 percentage point of any of this, it took 20-something people to cripple this country at 9/11. Now we're talking there could be thousands. That's scary. Continue.
Well, we talk about radical Islam, right? You say there's I think is it 4 billion practicing Muslims in the world?
Probably, yeah.
All right. So they say, only 1% are radicalized. Well, what's 1% of billions? Yeah.
1% of
that's a lot of people.
600 million?
Yeah, that's a lot of 9/11s. Jesus,
Oh my goodness.
So again, just to finish this up, so far in 2020, fiscal year 2023, the Border Patrol has arrested 35,433 aliens with criminal convictions or outstanding warrants nationwide, including 598 known gang members, 107 of those, 8 of those being MS-13.
And I personally would consider gang members terrorists, especially
absolutely
the fentanyl crisis.
Especially them. MS-13, they're animals. They're complete animals. They have no human redeeming. They might as well be a slug on the bottom of your foot in the garden. They are completely devoid of human emotion or anything. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
And then a final number in fiscal year 2023, including air and marine operations, they seized 27,293 pounds of fentanyl coming across the southwest border.
To kill the whole country of the United States.
6 billion people, Steve.
So the planet.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, pretty much. So here's the thing, right? Why is this happening? Okay, is there credence to the theory that the Democrats want more people moving to Democrat states that are being fled by legitimate taxpayers and they're afraid of losing congressional seats? Is that what's going on here? Okay.
I don't know.
So there's validity there. All right. So is it the fact that they believe that immigrants vote Democrat? So by deferral, would that mean that if immigrants were largely conservative, we would have closed the border already? I mean, are these even questions that we can ask? Are they fair? Are they silly? But here we know that resources like law enforcement are being funneled from vital agencies and services to accommodate people who don't belong here. And yes, I said that, and I will continue to say that. They're not illegal; they're criminals, criminalians, as Jay Severin used to call them. They're consequently making everyone, legitimate citizens mostly, greater risk of bodily harm as well as financial detribution because of all the resources that are being drained. Towns and cities are on the verge of exploding under the weight of this onslaught. They can't find budgets. They can't find places for people to live. People are losing their homes to like veterans are losing their homes to people who are moving into their residences. And that's a real thing, people. I'm not making that up. It's happened many times. And then there's going to be a rising crime, obviously, as many of the migrants are gang members. At most, they're gang members. At very least, they're unvetted. So schools and hospitals will be overwhelmed because illegals don't report to the census. Census data is how funding is determined by schools and hospitals, right? Well, if they don't report to the census that a figure being deported, you're going to have huge classes, no funding. All the legitimate students who are making progress are going to be held back by the language barriers and class sizes. These are the things people don't think about. These are the real damaging things about illegal immigration, all right? And then, I mean, some of it's shocking and tragic, and some of it is more like, oh, well, okay. But look at the massive costs in healthcare that every American is going to absorb for all the people that are going to the hospital, not being denied care because it's against the law, and then someone else is going to pay those bills. They said in Texas alone, they had 700 unpaid for medical visits in 1 week. All right, so someone's going to pay for that. So I guess the question is, does the government have blood on its hands? I mean, that is just what it comes down to. So if the government's supposed to protect its citizens, unchecked immigration is a serious danger. So unvalidated or validated stats, no matter how you want to look at it, the cost of life between crime, smuggling, drugs, human trafficking, terrorism, this is such a huge deal. People is what I'm trying to impress. And I'm not. If our listeners are already on this side, that's great. But if you're not, trying to think about this. How does this not affect everybody? And that's all I'm going to say, Steve.
Well, they feel it hasn't, and this is where I like what Governor Abbott did, DeSantis, and a few others. They move these people to places where the virtue signalers would have to step up to the plate rather than just say they want something done, like the Martha's Vineyard one. Oh, how dare you bring illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard where we're all rich and we're better than all of you. But it shook things up, and I thought that was a good thing.
And that was DeSantis who did that. And I thought that was brilliant because he did just that. He made the awareness there for people. So
yeah, should Texas and all those states in that area only bear the brunt of this? Or should the rest
they
of the
happen to border? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly. The rest of the country should see what's going on. But good story, Bill. Yes, we're talking about me speaking about the war outside, and I loved your correlation. This is the war inside. So in this podcast, we've covered the full culmination of what we're being attacked all over the globe and within our country. So it was a very good podcast on that. But we're at the end of the podcast. Went a little over, but that's fine. And we're usually at my feel-good part. Today I found a story. I wouldn't say, quotes, it's a feel-good story, but it's something that's important to show what the hell was going on in this country and how things are about to change over a tree. But anyway, White House issues unprecedented pardons after FDA finds cannabis to be more like Tylenol than heroin, as they said for decades. On Friday, January 20th, the federal government waved the white flag in the war on drugs as it regards the cannabis plant. President Biden issues presidential pardons to any American or lawful permanent resident who has a conviction of cannabis possession on their record. At the same time, he ordered the Department of Health and Human Services to compile a case for the reclassification of cannabis from a Schedule I drug, such as heroin and cocaine, to a Schedule III drug like testosterone and fortified Tylenol. Decades of advocacy have created a national picture where 38 states have legalized cannabis for medicinal use. And 24 states, 2 territories, and D.C. have legalized cannabis for recreational use. The United States FDA Controlled Substance Staff writes in the HHS report that their agency is recommending the rescheduling of cannabis as it meets all 3 criteria for doing so, namely a lower potential for abuse compared to Schedule II substances and existing and established medical use, and a lower psychophysical dependency potential. The marijuana withdrawal syndrome appears to be relatively mild compared to the withdrawal syndrome associated with alcohol, which can include more serious symptoms such as agitation, paranoia, seizures, and even death, writes the FDA, which added that while there are many unproven claims about the medicinal use of cannabis, there is credible scientific evidence for its use in reducing the side effects of chemotherapy. Sweeping changes could take place if such a rescheduling would occur, which will ultimately be decided by the Drug Enforcement Agency. The already multi-billion-dollar cannabis industry would benefit from a much safer banking and tax environment. Hundreds of thousands of people, particularly young adults, wouldn't be turned into criminals by choosing to use a largely harmless substance for recreation, and people, particularly veterans, who live in states where recreational and medicinal cannabis is not available, could obtain it safely. Relating to the presidential pardon, Biden announced the war on drugs had failed and that it was time to right these wrongs. Anyone who has a possession charge of cannabis, which may be impeding employment or housing opportunities, can apply for a certificate that shows they have been pardoned and the conviction is off their record at Justice.gov. Criminal records for marijuana use and possession have imposed needless barriers to employment, housing, and educational opportunities. Too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs, Biden said. This does not apply to use imprisoned or convicted of selling cannabis. A Gallup poll conducted in October 2023 found that 70% of Americans believe cannabis should be completely legalized in all its forms. But what I think it's a great thing that this is done, because I did a paper in college for my English degree talking about uh, someone that did marijuana and someone that did alcohol. And the big thing I came with is most people, not most, but a large percentage, probably more than 50 if I remember correctly, that went into a bar and drank also ingested tobacco. So here they were drinking and ingesting tobacco, which was significantly worse than the use of marijuana. Now, I was an athlete and didn't do anything my whole life. I did drink and partied with my friends, but I wouldn't do anything. And I'll tell you, the stuff I've learned about marijuana, it's probably the better thing than, say, drinking for someone. So this needs to be done. But the big thing, like I want to get to, that I really took out of this story here is, where is it? Sweeping changes could take place with this drug. And it basically says that it hurt people from getting jobs, housing opportunities, many things like that. So my thing is, I'm glad they see that. And I hope they correlate that to the prison and judicial system as a whole. Because if you go to jail and say you commit a felony, we'll bring it to that. You commit a felony. You get sentenced to jail for, say, 5 years for said felony. You do your 5 years time, you should be able to come out and be on probation or parole. And if you do nothing wrong in that time, your record should be sealed. You should not have a life sentence if you served your time on a crime and then rectified your life. I don't like how the judicial system works in that, and I hope this will open the eyes to many things like that. But what do you think about this, Bill?
Well, I have so many thoughts. I love the idea of mass pardons. That's what we're talking about here, right?
Commuting sentences. Okay. Yeah, people that got caught with possession will get a mass pardon. Yeah, but they do have to go to that website, justice.gov. Go ahead.
Right. Well, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to get their lives back. Well, actually, that's not true, because they won't get their lives back because their lives have been ruined over something as silly as marijuana. I have always been a proponent of marijuana versus alcohol. I did not start smoking it. I did in high school, a little in college, but many, many years, over 30 years without doing it until I was on dialysis. And I was just so miserable and so sick, and everything was up and up. Up was down, down was white, black was white. It was just awful. And they recommended that I try marijuana, and the relief it gave me was mind-boggling. And I'm still a fan of it. And Steve, I always remember the line from As Good as It Gets, but Jack Nicholson is in the bar, and you know how he had no ability to modify what he was saying. The bartender says, how you doing today? And he goes, well, I'm doing good. Here I am talking to a moron selling the last legal drug. And I never forget that, because A, he almost got decked, and B, it reminds you that, yes, alcohol is legal, but marijuana isn't. And for a fact, the most crime you're going to commit while on marijuana, and only marijuana, I mean, if you add anything to the mix, then, this statement off the table, is maybe steal a bag of Fritos in a local 7-Eleven. No one's going home and beating their wife and smacking their kids around and crashing into, well, yes, driving is still an issue because you're impaired, okay?
Well, that's one thing. Just like driving, alcohol is with that.
So. Right. I couldn't drive while high because my reflexes are terrible. But people don't do the things they do while drinking. Drinking is a terrible thing. And never mind what it's about it being bad for you. Everything's bad for you. But I mean, alcohol destroys lives. There are millions of people in this country who are in alcohol recovery. Okay. When I was in a case manager, I met one person who claimed to be addicted to marijuana. And behind the scenes, a lot of people says, there's something else going on there, because marijuana is really not addictive. Exactly. At least marijuana is the habit itself is addictive. If you have a ritual like I kind of have right now, where I come home and by 8:00 I probably have a couple of puffs to shut my brain down. Yeah, I'm admitting it. I use marijuana. Okay. Alcohol people commit violent crimes. They destroy family. They destroy lives. And listen, alcohol is cool. Drink a few Bud Lights, knock yourself out. You know, the worst that'll happen is you'll start wearing dresses. But the thing about other than that is that marijuana is not a gateway drug. It's not a big enough deal. It's a plant, untreated. It's right off the vine. You pick it and you use it. You know, it isn't like it's cocaine. We take a coca leaf and you do all these things to it. It's about time. I hope the story comes to true, ends up being a true, actual situation in which some really victimized people are able to get their lives back again, as it were. It's a great story, Steve. I was really excited when you introduced it.
Yeah, I just think, like you're saying, that, how the hell is alcohol, legal? It is an awful thing. AA was not started over drugs. Let's remember that.
Not MA. No, it's not MA.
Right. AA was started over alcohol. It's that bad. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I mean, we could go on and on about how many organizations were formed to combat alcohol. Prohibition was a big thing, okay? The bottom line is I'm starting to lean in the libertarian direction a little bit on this subject, Bill, in the belief that I think all drugs should be legalized. Like, I don't do drugs, but I get the point, okay? I get the point that I'd rather someone get a controlled substance by a doctor than some drug dealer that wants them to die or don't care if they die, okay? Right. I'd rather them be able to get drugs that are not going to kill them or be able to have someone monitor them if they're going to do it. It's a much better way to do things than all these overdoses and bad deaths that we're having in this country.
I think more people are leaning that way than you might not. I'm not going to say than you might think. I don't know what you think, but I mean, I think that we both might be surprised at how many people share that view. Okay. Yes, it is safer. Even marijuana being legalized has reduced almost any and all medical issues related to marijuana because you're not simply taking a shot at buying whatever some kids, put in a bag. You actually have dispensaries which monitor this and make sure that it's pure, if nothing else, and there aren't any additives. Like right now, you can very well worry about getting fentanyl in your marijuana if you buy it off the street.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, that's why I'm saying the libertarian thing is what I think is the way to go.
And I'll tell you, the other thing is that jail is not going to solve a person's drug problem and help them get back to their life again.
Right.
It's not.
Exactly.
What is that going to do? So great topic, Steve. We got to follow up on that about 3 months from now, see what happens with it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and we probably should. We should look into this and see what's transpiring with this situation. But good topics on a lot of things, Bill. I loved it today. We did not do Bill's This Day in History, but as you can see, we put a lot of content. We got an hour and a half podcast. We appreciate you all listening. We hope you learn something like we do from each other every day. And like we always say, we're just two guys discussing the issues, laying out the facts of those issues, and then giving you our view and opinion here at the We Are Marshall podcast. We'd love it if you go check out our segments and our podcast episodes on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Storyful, and go to Rumble, which is similar to YouTube, and that's where we populate our channel. They don't censor things. We don't want to have to worry about and be careful what we're saying sometimes. We just want to be real guys talking to you. So we don't want to have to worry about YouTube, mincing our words or something like they have.
We don't want to be remotely censored.
Exactly. We do not want the cancel culture to be prevalent in our lives. So this is where we are. We'd love it for you to go to Rumble, like I said, like, share, and subscribe and follow so you get notified of all our new content and the endeavors that Bill and I are doing here, because there's a lot going on, and this year is going to be a big year for the We Are Marshall podcast. This is season 2. We'd also love it if you would go support our sponsor, MateConnector.com, a large dating website out there with all the bells and whistles of the big players in the market, but they're much, much more inexpensive. Go check them out, support them like they support us, and be ready. We'll be back here tomorrow with another podcast. Hopefully there's some good news in these election primaries that are going on, and we'll probably be discussing that with you tomorrow and the results.
Oh, we will be. Tomorrow will be just post New Hampshire.
Yeah, but everybody have a good night. Thank you, Bill. I'll talk to you guys soon. Good night.
Great show, man.